So were you in law enforcement before you were a dog trainer or reverse or?
Well, I was a dog trainer first. So that's kind of a weird thing because a lot of guys that were canine officers wind up getting into training. They leave law enforcement and they get into training dogs.
Right.
Um, I went off to a dog training school in 1994 and learned how. My main reason why I chose that school was it was heavily involved in training police dogs.
Hmm.
And so that was what I really wanted to do, is be a police dog trainer. So I learned all that side of it, plus learned how to do pet obedience and everything. And lost you there. Okay, you're back.
So you can
And
see me, right?
yeah, I can see you. You just went away for a second.
Okay, I'm on my end. I'm frozen, so I was like, I'll just cut it out and put it back and see if it works. But if you can
No,
see me fine, then it's fine.
yeah, you're good. So I went to that school and everything, and then I got out of there. And of course, this was in the mid '90s. This is pre-internet and all that. Growing a business was really, really, really hard back then because you had no social media,
Right.
and dog training wasn't viewed by anybody really as a profession. It was viewed as a hobby that you could make a little side income on. So our dream was laughable to everybody else at that time. They're like, yeah, Mark, when are you going to grow up and get a real job? And so I did, and I went and got into law enforcement, and I worked law enforcement. I got right into canine right away, and my background led me to get into canine and become like department trainer and stuff like that, like super fast because of my background. I just sort of filled that void that they needed. And so, yeah, I kind of went things in reverse from way most people do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I read in your bio that you got in a shootout, man.
Yeah.
And you got plugged 3 times.
Sure did. Yeah.
Tell me about that, man.
Yeah, that was 2005. So I had been in law enforcement for about 6 years, 7 years. And yeah, just did, without going into the entire depth of the story, but it's like 1 o'clock in the morning one night. I was a very proactive officer. I would work all night long trying to find, drugs and drunk drivers and stuff. I mean, I didn't stop. I was a hunter. And
yeah, it's almost like it's a theme of who you are.
It is. I'm
You're
an adventure seeker.
Man.
I'm a very much, even at 50 years old, I'm an adventure seeker to the day. I just trade one way of finding that sort of rush, not the rush. Getting shot at is not the rush that I desired, but but no, it was I was actually in the middle of a traffic stop. I stopped this car, and they were all over the road, and I was like, man, I got me a drunk driver. 1 o'clock in the morning, I pulled them over, and I'm outside their door, and I'm talking to them, and I realize it's 2 Hispanic males at 1 o'clock in the morning, and one of them is teaching the other one how to drive. They weren't drinking at all. It was just literally the guy thought, hey, in the middle of the night, let me go out here and show you how to drive. So I'm in the middle of talking to them, and a car goes by me, and I heard the car around the corner before it actually passed me, and I heard that lawnmower exhaust, what I call it.
Yeah,
and I hear it. There's a convenience store around that corner, and I hear this car just screeching tires and pulling out of the convenience store. 1 o'clock in the morning.
Man.
The cop in me immediately says that store may have just got robbed.
Yeah, that place just got hit.
Right. Well, the car comes around the corner, coming towards me at a high rate of speed. They see the blue lights because I'm on the traffic stop. They think it's a roadblock, a license check. So they slow down and stop in the middle of the road, way, way back. And then I think they kind of put 2 and 2 together and realize, okay, that guy's on a traffic stop. And they drive by me, and the driver's like 10 and 2. Everybody in the back seat's looking straight ahead. There's a guy in the back seat, guy in the front seat. They're all looking straight ahead, like they're not even daring look at me. And they drive right on by me. And I knew I couldn't at the time tell their ethnicity, but sure. I knew they weren't white males. I knew they weren't black males. They were either Asian or they were Hispanic. At the time, I thought they were Hispanic males. We had a big Hispanic population in that town I worked at, and they went by, and their behavior triggered me big time because everything was just, all the red flags went up. Yeah. The hair on my back goes up, and as they go by, I noticed one of the things that stuck in my head was I noticed that they all seem to be wearing blue. So I'm thinking gang colors.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
So they go on by me. And immediately I'm like, I got better things to do. I hand this guy back his driver's license. I said, y'all be safe. And I jump back and I get in my car.
Yeah.
And as soon as I start heading back to the car quickly, that car gets on the gas and takes off. The one that was driving by.
Yeah.
So they take off and I'm like, okay, this is about to get interesting. So I whip around and I go after him. As soon as I get fairly caught up to him, I activate my blue lights and siren to go ahead and initiate a traffic stop on them.
Yeah.
Because at this point there are, I can already tell they're way over the speed limit. They're trying to evade me before I even got close enough to make a traffic stop. All right. It's a 35-mile-an-hour zone where they were. So they were flying.
Man.
So as I start getting closer to them, I call out, I'm in a vehicle chase. We go through all these little neighborhoods through this town that I'm working in. We weren't on any highways or anything like that. It was like 35-mile-an-hour zone neighborhoods. And at one point we were doing like 80 through these neighborhoods at like 1:00 in the morning.
Man.
They blacked out. They turned onto a road and they blacked out their headlights. So they were driving like 80 and a 35 with no headlights in the middle of the night. I don't know how they did it, but they did. And I'm doing all I can to try and catch up to them. And they come to an intersection and they take a right, and about 1 block after that, it's a dead end. And so they jump and bail out of their car. As soon as they jump out of the car, the guy in me is like, I'm going to grab one of these guys. There's 3 of them. I'm going to get a hold of one of them.
Sure.
I was the kind of go-getter that I was like, if it's going to be a foot chase, let's get at it. You know what I mean? I'll chase one of you down. Tactic wise wasn't the strongest in the world for me. Sometimes your adrenaline gets the best of you.
Makes total sense.
And so when they came to a stop, their car was, I would say, maybe 50 feet in front of mine, but they were sideways. So I was kind of T-boned up to them. Okay. All I can see is the passenger side of the car. Front seat passenger and the back seat passenger get out at about the same time. I'm outside my door. I clear my door, which is my fatal error. I clear the door because I'm getting ready to go into a foot chase. As I clear the door, they're running out of the passenger side and going to go around the back of the car and then take off running. The guy that comes out of the front passenger seat is a little heavy set. Okay, let's just put it that way. He comes out of the seat and I immediately notice he's got a handgun in his hand, ready to go.
Yeah.
So I stop in my tracks. I draw down on him. As I draw down on him, I don't even know what's happening. The driver that was on the opposite side of the car that I can't see because the vehicle's blocking me of being able to see him stops shooting at me. So I start getting shot at by the guy that I don't even know has a gun. The guy that has a gun is right in front of me. And I'm basically, he's my immediate threat right in front of me.
Sure.
And so I hear shots. Before I know it, I'm on the ground. It feels like I got hit with a baseball bat in the chest. I'm on the ground and realizing, it's not completely acknowledged in my brain that I've been shot, but I don't know if it was the first shot that was fired or whatever, but one of the first shots that driver fired hit me directly in the chest.
Man.
So, it's not like the movies where you just stand there and you stagger and stuff like that. It literally felt like, Andre the Giant took a baseball bat and hit me full swing in the chest.
Yeah. That's
Knocked
a lot
the wind
of
out
concussion.
of me.
Even with your vest catching it. And I would say kind of especially because your vest caught
the vest makes it more of a concussion.
Yeah. It disperses all of that pressure and it hits hard.
Absolutely. It's exactly what it does. I mean, it's what it's designed to do, but it absorbs the impact instead of your body absorbing.
Yeah.
So it knocked the wind out of me immediately. But you're in the fight, so as soon as I hit the ground, I've still got my handgun in my right hand. I would thank God I didn't drop that. I put my left hand on the ground and I'm getting up and I'm firing in the direction of muzzle flash that's coming towards me.
Yeah.
Because the guy's still shooting at me while I'm on the ground.
Man.
Now, I'm just shooting in the dark towards muzzle flash. I can't even see that person. I just see flashes of muzzle, and I'm firing as I'm trying to get up, and I'm wanting to get to cover at this point.
Sure. Just trying to not die.
Exactly. I'm in total survival mode. I'm literally about to lose it, and I'm like panic. And during this time, remember, the guy I immediately had my vision on was the guy closest to me that had a gun. He hadn't fired on me. While I'm getting up, I notice him draw his weapon on me while I'm still on the ground.
You got to drop him.
But I'm already got my weapon pointed in the direction where the shots are coming from. And then I see this guy, and he is whirling around with his gun in my direction while I'm on the ground getting up, and he's probably 15 feet away from me. So I'm dead right there.
Yeah.
I'll get back to that in a minute, but in my statement that I had to give after all this took place, I told them that he was firing at me. They were both firing at me, because that's what I felt was happening, because there was rounds being fired at me. Okay. Anyways, I wound up getting up and I flee for my life. Basically, I don't even know where my car is. My car is right behind me, but all I'm thinking is, get the heck out of this roadway. They're right there in front of me with guns,
Yeah.
So I run to my left. I got no wind. I'm completely got the wind knocked out of me. I run to my left and I dive over the edge of the road where there's railroad tracks, and it goes down 15 feet in an embankment. Man. And I get down there, and the first thing I think of is, I've got to call for help, because I hadn't even called for help yet. So backing up a little bit
quickly.
Yeah, it was so quick. So backing up a little bit, the call went out on the radio that I was in a chase. They knew the roads that I was on.
Yeah.
And then there was dead radio silence, because it all happened so quick. So I didn't give out the final stopping point of it, and that they had jump and run. So they're calling me on the radio, trying to figure out where I'm at. They're heading in that direction, point last heard from me. And they're all, their experience said, he's in a foot chase. That's why he's not answering. That's, they all assumed that. And so, anyway, I reach down for my radio and I start calling for help. I'm like, 1033, officer needs help. Officer been shot. Nobody's responding.
Man.
And I realized that when I hit the ground, my radio was clipped to my belt. Okay. When I hit the ground, I hit the ground so hard that the battery on the back of the Motorola radio came off. But see, the battery has a clip on it.
Yeah.
Okay. The battery separated from the radio. My battery is laying up on the road where I hit the ground.
Oh,
so no. I have my shoulder mic. My shoulder mic is attached to my chest and the heavy duty cord, and the radio itself is dangling around at my legs, and there's no battery attached to it. So you want to talk about panic? I've been shot. I don't know if I'm about to die. Yeah. I don't even know to the extent of my injuries at that point. I can't breathe, and I'm calling for help. And I realize there's not a soul in the world that can hear me. So
that'll make a Christian out of you fast.
Oh yeah. So so from there, I don't know where these guys are at. I don't know if they, wisdom would tell you they took off running. They're not going to come out to try and finish me. They're going to flee for their lives. Right.
Right.
And so my survival mode said, you got rounds on you. If you got to get back in the fight, get back in the fight, but you've got to get up there, get your radio in your car or whatever, get to the car radio, call for help, let them know you've been shot. So as I'm coming out of the woods up to my car, I'm getting up there, and immediately as I walk out into the roadway, one of my fellow officers comes screeching up to the stop. So he figured out where I was, and he gets out, and he gets out and he's like, where'd they go? Where'd they go? He sees me out of breath, and he's thinking that I just got into a foot chase and turned around and came back to the car. And I'm like, dude, I've been shot,
Man.
And so it was tough. It's been 18 years, I guess, since that. And I'm still emotional when I tell the story.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to talk about. But
I'm sure that changes you. Coming that close to the grave, I'm sure that
it's-
changes you.
it was awful. It really was.
Yeah.
I'm emotional about it. Just bear with me for a second.
Please, by all means.
Um, and don't feel bad for asking the question. I haven't told the story in a while, but I do get emotional about it.
I can only imagine, man.
I'm very thankful for so much.
Yeah.
So what happened? I got back up there. Ambulance is on the way, and I get on the ambulance, and I can remember standing we didn't know where they were. So when I got there, tactic wise, I'll be honest with you, at that point, what hit me the most was I was effing mad at the world. I was in an absolute rage.
I'm sure.
I got back and I started punching the side of my car.
I can only imagine.
My patrol dog's sitting in the car, barking his head off, doesn't know what's going on.
Sure.
Okay. And
he's ready for action. He's got lightning in his veins.
I'm like, I don't know if my dog's been shot through the windshield or anything. And and they're trying to calm me down. They get me behind the car for cover, and they start telling me, get your shirt off, take your vest off, because they wanted to see how badly I was hurt and all that. And the vest had stopped the round. And ambulance shows up. I get on the ambulance, and that was probably one of the scariest moments right there. Get to the ER, and they start doing x-rays and all this other stuff. And then lo and behold, one of the nurses that comes into the emergency room happens to be a nurse that I know who is a wife of an officer that's a friend of mine. So that kind of, when I saw her, that got me emotional. And
I'm sure.
But yeah, it was something. So I knew I had been hit in the chest. I mean, that was obvious to me. The vest had stopped the round, but it had still burst the skin. So they call it a back face contusion. The back face of basically the actual brass of the round. It's the craziest thing. So the vest stops the round, but the brass of the round is pancaked at that point, and it's like burnt into my skin on the inside of the vest. Right.
Man. So it ended up making contact.
Yeah, it made contact. Like it was through the vest and basically stopped in like the first couple layers of skin.
Oh my gosh.
The contusion of it caused the skin to basically burst. So, a week later, you could look at my chest injury and it looked like I had a bullet hole straight into my chest. I mean, that's what it looked like. I'm laying in the bed, and they're like, the doctors, the nurses, they're all going nuts. You know what I mean? This is anytime an officer gets shot, it's like a massive event. And they're like, you feeling, is anything else hurting? Is there anything else? Well, my adrenaline is going through my body so bad that the only thing I can feel is this. And I don't even realize that they start looking me over, because they realize that I can't feel pain at the moment. And so they're looking my body over, and they look down at my pants, and I got a hole in my pants. And I had a grazing wound on my left thigh. Okay. Man. So I had been hit there, but it was superficial. Didn't need any stitches or anything, but there was a hole straight through my pants where the bullet went in and came out. Okay. So that could have went in the femoral artery or anything like that. It could have shattered my femur, but it was a grazing wound to my left thigh. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm laying in the bed, and this is like 45 minutes later. An officer has gone to wake up my wife in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And bring her down there. Sorry.
No, please.
And bring her down there to me. And so I'm laying down there in the bed, and she shows up, and I'm making jokes at that point, trying to make her feel better.
I'm sure.
I'm like, and then the chief of police is there, and he's in the room with me, and he's talking to me. And I don't remember who said something, but somebody said, "Did you get blood on your boot?" And I was like, "What?" So we looked down, and I had these big, like, Danner Fort Lewis boots, like heavy duty,
I
combat
know the
boots.
name Danner. They're good
Yeah,
boots.
those were some serious boots. And I looked down at my boot, and there's a bullet hole in my boot. And I had a bullet hole again. It was a grazing wound, and it went through, and I still have the boots. The bullet hole went in like the instep of my right foot. It went in the top of my foot on the outer edge, and then came out at the lower instep, and just created a little bloody gouge in the side of my foot. Again, superficial injury. But basically I had been hit 3 times, and 2 of them I didn't even know until much later. So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a awful time. As far as the aftermath of it all,
that would be my question, because there's so much healing that has to take place in your mind for you to be able. I was on a plane about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and providentially found myself next to a man. He's a ranger, and we ended up talking about dogs, and we ended up talking about what I do and what he does and where those things kind of intersect. And he goes, yeah, we've got a handler in our unit. I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, but I think I destroyed the dog though. I was like, well, how did you do that? And I was like, now don't get me wrong. There are single learning events where a thing happens to you one time, and then never again do you have to have that to learn. You don't do it anymore.
Right.
And I was like, there are single learning events, even with dogs like that. Like, there's no way to avoid the fact that if an experience is crappy enough, we just don't go back. And so what he did was he banged the dog. They were doing drills, and he threw out a flashbang and banged the dog right in the face.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that though, about that single learning event. And we understand that as dog trainers, it's common, it's vernacular that we use.
Right.
But a funny story was I was out of work for about 2 months. They had to do an investigation, just statewide investigation on it because of officer involved shooting, even though I didn't actually shoot or kill anybody. And during the investigation, and then I have to go through psychological evaluations to make sure I'm fit to come back to duty.
Of course.
During that time, the detectives at my agency that were handling the case would come by the house to check on me and just give me updates on how the case was going. And they came by one day, and one of the guys, he happens to be my firearms instructor as well. He's sitting there with his cup of coffee, smoking his cigarette like he always does. And he's like, Mark, he's like, let me ask you, we were talking about how instead of staying behind my door for cover, how I had cleared the door and tried to chase the guy. He said, if you had to do it all over again, you'd probably do it differently, wouldn't you? And after 2 months of sitting at home thinking about it, I was like, I wouldn't have done a damn thing different.
Really?
Because I'll be honest with you, 2 months after the fact, I was still reliving the event and still was in the fight in my brain.
Yep.
I was still dealing with the trauma of it all.
I feel you.
And it was, I don't know, there was like a part of me that was fighting to not show any weakness,
That makes sense.
to not show, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was fighting to not show any of my brothers that I'm broken, that there's anything wrong with me.
That they hurt you.
And
that these punks could actually make a difference.
Right. And so, and that mentality, I went back to, 2 months later, I'm back on the road. And I'll be honest, when I went back on the road, I was hyper vigilant about everything.
I would have been a mean man.
Yeah. I was a very mean person. The slightest little thing would set me off because I felt like I was going to be a fight for my life. I was able to do my job, and I went back that next year. I was on a mission to prove stuff to people. And I made more arrests that year in the department than anybody else. So I went back to it as a go-getter. I am the same Mark that I ever was.
Yeah.
But I was a little rough with some people, not like beating people up, but I was a little quick to jump the gun on certain situations that I felt like my officer survival was at risk. It's just, the way it was. But I stayed there for about another year, and I wound up leaving. And it really didn't have anything to do with a lack of a love for the job, because I loved it, even after that happened. But I got an opportunity to go work at a nuclear plant as a company police officer, making double the money and no stress.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
Yeah, private security, that makes some dollars.
yeah, I mean, I literally was making 50% more money and basically sitting on my butt doing nothing, versus getting shot at. So
yeah,
I did it for the money, and I did it for my family,
totally makes
so
sense to me.
I did that for 10 years, and then I left all that to just start training dogs again full time.
That's awesome.
That was my short story.
It's funny. In preparation for this conversation, I just went to find everything I could. And so I was like, well, I'll start at what they tell us about themselves. I'll go to their website and read their about. And you gave me so much more in the about than I was expecting. I'm expecting, like, I come from this. I always loved dogs as a kid. And then I got this training, and now I've worked with this many dogs. And it was like, I got shot at this one time, and I could have died.
It's funny because I don't introduce myself as an officer who's been shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't go out of my way to tell people that, or to tell people my story. My wife always was the one that was always like, it's like, not that she was happy that I got shot, but she was proud of me. She was proud of me for fighting through it, and that I survived that. She wanted people to know. Yeah. And so I think when those bios were done on the website, I think it was a little bit more her doing than it was mine to put all that out there. I think
it's such a good thing, because, one thing I've learned in business is that people buy from people, and something that you and I have the opportunity to do with, smaller businesses than like Sears, Kohl's, Walmart. Sears, Kohl's, and Walmart, they are incapable of having a face to their brand. Maybe they could hire a spokesperson, but no person can truly be the face of their brand, because Sam Walton's dead, right? Let's be real. Yeah. And we have an opportunity to kind of be the face of the brand. And it makes a business harder to sell in 30 years. If you want to exit and you want to, count your dollars and let somebody else deal with it, it makes it harder to exit, I'm sure. But I loved it. I was reading this and I was like, this is a real human being, and not a cookie cutter bio designed to make you believe that I have never faced any difficulty, and life has always been easy. And it's been easy because I'm that much of a winner.
Yeah, right. Well, I appreciate that feedback. And it's accurate. I don't say that as, to brag, but it's accurate in the fact that everything that my wife and I have ever done in this business has been a fight. Everything nowadays is, if your business is going to be successful, for most people, it grows like a friggin' pine tree, right? It's like overnight sensation with a lot of stuff nowadays. It was never that way for us. It was just like, we're just going to keep on trucking along, and someday this dream will come true. And it took, it took 15 years of training dogs part-time for it to start becoming something where, like, hey, we're professionals now, and veterinarians are all recommending us, and we can make a living doing this, But the industry changed in the process of all that too. So that had a big part of it.
Yeah, and that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, because you are many years my senior in this discipline, not just in life, but in this discipline. And one of the things I can appreciate is this industry is what it is because of men like you who were operating at a really high level at a time when the majority of people were not expecting excellence, because the alternative was, I bought a For Dummies book and I tried it at my house, because that was basically the alternative. Men like you and your wife as well, practicing excellence is, I think, what gave us an actual space, an actual sphere. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And it's, we came up in a time where basically dog training was mostly done at your local AKC dog obedience club, if you happen to have one in the area. You went and you took a group class at night and all that. And private dog training was scarce, and you had to kind of like do some digging to find somebody, because if they weren't listed in the yellow pages, then you didn't know they existed, because we didn't have the internet. There was no YouTube videos and all that. So it was a different time, and you just had to stay steadfast on what you were trying to accomplish and get somewhere with yourself. And you know, it was challenging for us because we were looked down upon by lots of people because we weren't competitors. You know, we like, before I got into law enforcement and we were just dog trainers, those that were police canine officers, a lot of them would look down on people like us and like, oh, what do you know about dog training? You've never handled a real dog in your life, you know? And later on, I come to learn, what do you know about dog training? Because you've only handled dogs like what you have at the end of your leash right now. You don't know how to deal with a fearful dog. You don't know how to deal with, you know, So-So's Chihuahua, you know?
Yeah. You get handed the keys to a Bugatti and then you brag about racing well.
Exactly.
But no one's ever given you an old beat up Civic.
Right. And I'm not knocking the canine guys and even like the gun dog guys. Like, you see the same thing with the people who train hunting dogs for a living, and then they do a little pet obedience on the side. Yeah. Some of them are good at that pet obedience and some of them are awful. And it's because it's not their bread and butter. They're used to working with a certain caliber of dog. And when they can't switch gears very well to work with a dog that is much less caliber, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. That got a little sidetracked there with that, but
yeah, it's amazing to me because I think back to my childhood, and the rescue space wasn't what it is now, where the bleeding hearts will pour out tens of thousands of dollars for Bella, who's 14.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To have a surgery that she might die during.
Right.
It's like, it's a different world, man.
It is.
And I look back at like when I was a kid, like dogs were outside, you know, and they were expected to have fleas because they were outside. And
yeah.
What has it been like seeing the major shift from, because your career has straddled one of the most interesting changes, I think, in the history of mankind dog ownership. Your career has straddled one of the biggest like point of view shifts I think we could possibly have, short of dogs being president. It was like dogs are only outdoors and you hit them when they piss you off, to like dogs run the freaking show. And if you tell my sweet little Max that he's wrong, you're abusive. You know what I mean? Yeah. From the and from before, like Keeler, where it was just like it's just firm but fair.
Right.
Listen, there are clear consequences. Before even that, like going down to like just straight up abuse being the norm.
Yeah, right.
Like the dog influencers of the world, where it's like if you didn't give them chicken, you basically shot him in the head.
Right. Yeah, no, it's been a crazy ride, and you know, it's an interesting topic because when we first started out, you know, we didn't have a facility and all that kind of stuff. So we were doing private lessons. And we would just drive to people's houses. I'd pull up my little pickup truck and I'd get out and we would do dog training in someone's yard. And it not only took place in the yard because we didn't have a facility, but it took place in the yard because that's where the dog lived. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I would tell you that back when we started in the 90s, that probably 75% of the dogs that we worked with were backyard dogs. Yeah. And the problems were, you know, the dog won't stop jumping on me and getting me muddy because the dog's left outside and it's excited every time it sees you.
Yeah.
It's chewing the hose up off, you know, the garden hose and stuff like that. These were the problems, or it's trying to climb the fence and get out. These were the things we were always facing. And it was a different world back then with training because people wanted, we still see people to this day who just want problems solved. I want you to fix this and I want you to fix that. Right.
Yeah.
But back then it was bigger because your own dog was a little bit more of a nuisance. Nuisance behaviors were more paramount because you didn't spend as much time with them. They were outside. If they were on your nerves, just let them outside. Get out of the house for a couple hours.
That's right.
Know? Well, my parents did that to me when I was a kid too.
Go outside and play. That's
a
strategy with kids too. It's like you're driving me bonkers. Go play. Go skin your knee or something.
Now, people desire to have a relationship with their dog. They want the dog to be with them. They want to go everywhere and do everything with their dog, almost to a fault. So that what they desire that, which is so different. But as you know, a lot of people's idea of a relationship with their dog is not a healthy relationship. And that's where, and now they've created different problems because they've gone from you're out in the backyard to you're in my bed. You eat off the same plate as me. You do everything.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? Hey,
you eat before I do. I eat your leftovers.
You're my fake service dog. I'm going to take you everywhere with me that we go because I just love my dog and I can't be separated from you because I'm a weak person.
I love it because I mean, I swear we're one step away, and maybe TikTok will do this, but we're one step away from dogs eating at the table and owners eating crumbs underneath it.
I'm sure there's people who would say, I have no problem with that. You know, I have no doubt in my mind. I mean, it's like we've already gotten to the point where language is everything when it comes to dog training. You can, as you go through the years, you see the changes in language, and we're already seeing certain tribes of trainers that are using consent. The dog doesn't consent to that.
That blows my mind.
Right. And it's it's these sort of things, and we're starting to see people who think obedience is a dirty word. And so they say, we don't do obedience here. We just do behavior work. We don't do this. We don't do that. Yeah. We see this stuff.
I haven't met a trainer that talks like that, but you're saying there are.
Oh, there's tons of them. Actually, I literally just this morning, it popped into my news feed. Some guy over in the UK say we don't do obedience. We do something else. And he's selling online programs to help you with your dog, but we're going to,
oh my gosh.
And I mean, I know there's more to owning a dog and having a good relationship, more to it than just obedience. Right. I mean, we want to have fun with our dog and we want to spend time with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But people so we see the way people's relationships have gone with their dogs into the extreme. And now we have people that are in so-called professionals that are now trying to fill that need, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to, instead of, and honestly, I don't think that a lot of the people that do these kinds of things, I don't think they know any better. Like a lot of these professionals that offer some of these things that I look at and laugh, I don't think that they really realize how foolish what they're doing is.
Yeah.
Because they have the same mindset as some of these owners that need their relationships corrected. Yeah. So it's like they're not really helping the person. They're just like, we're gonna jump right in with your messed up life with your dog, and we're just gonna
and they're in an echo chamber such that the client is happy. The amount of times I have heard a client come to me later on after working with so-and-so or such and such program, blah, 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 and say, I know my dog will never totally be better than X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Yeah. They'll never totally, but what do you mean? You mean the problem will never truly be solved? Because I think there are some, I'm going to expect a German Shepherd to have a certain level of territorial nature in his mind.
Yes.
And I've told clients that I've had that had, I swear to you, they had working line dogs. They didn't have show dogs. They had working line dogs. And I've told them, hey, if you see him bark a time or two, don't be alarmed. As long as we can turn it off with just a word, you should be fine. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is you got a dog that doesn't fit your lifestyle. And so our options are to tame it a bit or to get rid of the dog. You just got a dog that doesn't fit, you're a homebody and your dog's not. But aside from things where it's like DNA is playing actually a pretty big role, like expecting a German Shepherd to be a golden retriever, aside from stuff like that, it's dumb crap. I will not give this YouTuber, now you know who I'm talking about, the free press, right? But I'm looking in the comments of one of these videos and someone says, using what you're advised, I was finally able to potty train my dog after a year. Brother, a year?
Yeah.
A year to teach a dog not to poop and pee in the house?
It's crazy.
And what's crazy is they think that's okay and that's normal. It's like, well, I know he's going to learn at his own pace. And I just want to give him a safe home. And I just want him to know that we love him. And it's like, your dog needs to know that, okay, I'm not talking about actually spanking dogs, right? But it's like, your dog needs to know you're going to whoop his freaking butt.
Right.
Like, he needs to understand that there are boundaries. And there's a video of you, I think it's on your YouTube channel, of you doing sit on the dog with a dog. And then he goes to bite at the leash. And of course, you punch out the word out, and the dog immediately stops. And of course, we know that some of the natural benefit of this is mom sometimes growls at her puppies.
Yep.
And so that's one of the nice things about the word out. And as you punch that word out, it sounds a little bit like a growl from mom. And so there's a natural benefit to that. But I love it. You go out, and the dog immediately stops, and you pause and you go, consequences, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it worked very beautifully on that video. And I know exactly what you're talking about on that video. Man. Yeah. No, it's good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I had something I was going to talk about and I totally forgot about it. So I'll just go on with your next topic. I apologize. My brain went dead.
So I think it's crazy. Your career has straddled this. So how have you navigated marketing to people to continue finding your tribe, people that are going to have some common sense?
Well, okay. So a couple of things. I live in a rural area in the South. Okay.
That probably helps.
So, I'm not going to get political and stuff like that, but so it's a fairly conservative area. Okay.
Sure.
If you live more in a metropolitan area, you're going to have a little bit different way of thinking with a lot of topics. And a lot of that goes with dog training as well. I find that. So I could live an hour to the east of me, and I would probably get a lot more flack for a lot of the stuff that I do say and how I train. Right.
Yeah.
But where I am who I am. And I just do what I do. And I do what works. I do what gets results. And I guess part of it is it's a luxury to getting old. When you're young and you're in this business, you're kind of trying to find your groove. And I remember what that was like. And I feel for anybody that's, less than 10 years in this and they're younger and they're trying to figure it out, what's going to work, what works and what sells and what's marketable and all this type of stuff. But as you get older, you're like, I just don't give a, what, this is years of experience, and it's not bragging to say it's wisdom. And it's just, I know what works. And my wife and I both have the same approach with our clients. We cut up. We have a great sense of humor with our clients. We have a good time with them. We're not awesome. Militaristic with them.
Sure.
Most of our clients become really close friends.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're beating them. Like I think I put off the image to a lot of people that I must be really hard to work with. Not at all,
No, you seem to me like you actually are easier to work with because you have an uncompromised message, which means you know exactly what you're going to get. And it's not there's a verse in James, I think it is, that talks about a double-minded man being, tossed to and fro with every wind and wave of doctrine.
Yeah.
And it identifies in another book, I think it's Galatians, it identifies this as the condemnation of the devil, being lifted up in pride while you're not rooted, driven by every wind and wave of doctrine, and then falling into that condemnation.
No, that's beautiful how you tied that in, and it's perfect scripture to line that up. It's I always tell people, like, it's better to tell you what you need to hear than what you want to hear. You didn't pay me for me to just be your echo chamber,
That's right.
You paid me because you hope that I have answers, and you may not like the answers that I give you, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. And I'm not going to lay it on hard. I mean, I tell the truth to people, but I do it in a way where I'm trying not to hurt their feelings. I'm trying not to make them not want to come back. I want them to enjoy their training sessions with me or with my wife, but I want them to realize that everything that we do is real. We're trying to be as real and upfront with you. Yeah. And, that's just the way that we do things. But also tying into what you just said there too, is one of the hardest things about this age in dog training is where you got this information overload. And
Yeah.
so you're going back and forth. You're pulling from one thing to the other. You're getting so much information in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You're growing, your mind is growing so fast and you're swaying all over the place. And I think that's a really troubled area to be in.
Yeah.
It's wonderful at one point, but you have to eventually find something that you agree with,
Yeah.
that lines up with you personally and with the results that you're getting. You have to find something, and then you have to work at trying to master it. And
Yeah.
most people don't. They do something for a month and then it didn't work very well and they jump ship, and they just, your business model in itself becomes kind of a mess because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a great book by, I think it was Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great and a few others. But it was called How the Mighty Fall. And in this book, they analyze some of the companies that they were analyzing for Good to Great, where they were talking about like companies who just exploded. And Circuit City was actually, if I recall correctly, one of the ones that they were like going crazy about in Good to Great. And then it's one they talked about in How the Mighty Fall.
Yeah.
Because it like exploded, and it like the organization understood where there was a hole in the market and they punched there.
Yeah.
But then they, so there are steps in the book and I forget them, but the first one is hubris born of success, having some success and thinking, okay, I've got it figured out now. Yeah. And then there are a few other stages like trying out too many solutions at one time without truly measuring results, and having a devil may care attitude about risk, and then there's the step right before total capitulation, where you're driving in so many different directions so quickly because you're frantic and you're in this scarcity mindset, not in an unabundant success mindset. And every single company, they had 5 stages to total capitulation, and every company that exhibited those stages, every one of them died.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
One of them was that what you're talking about, your business model becomes a mess because you have no differentiation and no abiding values. And I got to tell you, as one Christian dog trainer to another, I have found so much solace in this information era, because I started training post Caesar, right? Where it's like now we have celebrity trainers, and it's a very different world, and information is swirling around quickly. And if you put some of the, I don't have any of my dog training books out here. If you put some of the dog training influences I have in a room together, they would be screaming at one another within 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But one of them had this right, and another one freaking nailed that. You know what I'm saying? And I found myself on this, I was on this kind of self-improvement journey where I had lost sight of the most important thing in my business, which is to make sure my results are incredible and my client is happy. If you can do that, if you can make your results so fantastic that your client is unbelievably happy, your business basically has no choice but to grow. It'll grow against your will. And it's a great book by Brittany Hodak called Creating Superfans. And it's basically about creating a next level customer experience. And they talk about something called customer experience mapping, which is something that multi-billion-dollar corporations do. And they pay millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to get it done. But she was like, basically, hey, just keep it simple. Think about, from your client's perspective, what problems they run into and in what orders, and how can you create solutions for all these, but how can you make it a really enjoyable experience? So I had nearly destroyed my business. I mean, we were dying.
Really?
And it's because I was at the last stage right before capitulation. I'll try 15 things and have no real focus. I will not measure risk. I will not think about risk or optimize against my risk, blah, 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 blah. And so I was this close to just totally destroying our business. And at that time, I had to go back to what I know is true. And I had to say, well, what of my life in my business and in my training, what can I justify with scripture alone? What I found was And I started learning about customer experience before Brittany Hodak's book, got several business books back here because I'm marking them up like the freaking Bible. Just learning what I can. And I, I was like, what can I justify through scripture alone? Because I know that's true. I hold the belief that all scripture is God-breathed, as he tells, I think it's Timothy, all scripture is God-breathed, good for instruction, good for reproach. And so I was like, well, if a man wants friends, let him show himself friendly. So if you want clients, be good to clients, be fun to work with, be good to work with. So I go, okay, customer experience is important. What else? Well, threefold cord is not easily broken. Maybe I could bunch my people together to create accountability, to make the journey a little bit easier for them. And I started thinking about as well the biblical implications of training. If you don't chastise your son, Proverbs says, you hate him.
Mm-hmm.
That's a direct quote from Proverbs. If you won't chastise your son, you hate him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a moment in Proverbs, I forget which chapter it is. It says, if you deliver your son from correction for his crying, yet you must do it again.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to start over.
Yeah.
But he's crying and it hurts and it's sad or whatever. I mean, I don't even necessarily mean hurting physically, although maybe. He's crying and it hurts and he doesn't enjoy it. But if you stop, you're going to have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there was a motivational speaker years ago, and he said, man, you're already in pain. Get something from it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like waking up at 5 a.m. and working out because you know that's the only hour you're going to have to do it. And maybe that's not, but if it is, waking up at 5 a.m. and working out is hard. You know what else is hard? Looking at yourself in the mirror and not liking how you look.
Right.
You know what else is hard? Being on 19 medications because you just don't know how to get on the frickin' treadmill.
Yeah.
And so in life, we choose our hard.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be hard. Like newsflash, none of us are making out of this thing alive.
Right. Exactly.
It's maximally hard.
Yeah.
But we get to choose which hard. And so I remember early this year, I was like this close to just destroying my business. I was this close. And Facebook has this thing where as a business, you have a news feed now. And I was earlier this year, I finally got that. Maybe everybody else was there before me, but I finally got it. And it started putting you in front of me for whatever reason.
Okay.
I'm in Texas.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it was like suggested for you. And I'm sure the 20,000 followers helps, but for whatever reason, it was like, you should read this guy. And I loved how no nonsense your message was.
Right.
And you might not know this. You were instrumental in me pulling my head out of a big, thick cloud. And I didn't know what to do. And you were instrumental in like pulling my head out of that and going, okay, let's just take a moment. Let's take some inventory. What do we know is true? And I remember I had thrown like haphazardly tossed a Keeler book on the shelf because I didn't read any of the obedience. I just went straight to problem solving. And I talked to what's his face? Oh, I forget his name. I'm wanting to say it's Bob, but that seems too generic to actually be his name. Because Keeler's company still exists, right? And so I went to go get a planner from him, and I was gonna.
You talked to Tony.
It's Tony. Yeah.
Tony, yeah.
So I was like, let me go get trained in what they're currently doing. After you and I had a lesson, I was like, evidently they're still doing this. So let me go get a lesson from them because Mark said what they're doing today is a little bit different than what's in the book. And when I talked to him, I was like, man, when I first found this thing, I jumped straight to the problem solving. And then I saw him say, go get some doweling from a department store and hit your dog on the nose with it. Right. And I went, nope, and tossed it on a shelf. Yeah. And I was like, I'm never opening it again. And he said, that's what everybody does.
Everybody does.
Nobody reads the book. Yeah. They all just jump straight to how do I fix an aggressive dog? And he's like, well, a real hood, you can hit him in the face.
Well, let me stop for 1 second too, because if you think about it, right, take Keeler out of the picture. You never even seen the book before. Yeah. What is the average human being? The average human being doesn't want to work through something. They just want a problem solved. Same thing. If you have a marital problem, you're like, she just needs to stop doing that. You don't need to worry about fixing what I'm doing. She needs to stop doing that. If your kid's going to therapy, you need to help my kid. but you don't want to necessarily hear what you're doing as a parent that's reflecting on your kid, right?
That's
All
right.
these things. And so when people get a book like that, they start reading it and they're like, let me go back to the table of contents. Oh, down here, it's like chapter 13 or whatever, problem solving. Let me go straight to that, because that's what I have is problems. And
Right.
so they read that and they're like, all right, I'm going to toss that on the shelf. That scared the crap out of me.
That
And
guy's
that's
a nutcase.
if I could be in Bill Keeler's head, I'd be like, just leave that out of the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
It's gonna hurt
stuff
your
that
reach.
back then was done behind the woodshed. You know what I mean? But and we just don't need that stuff in publication. There's some things in that chapter that aren't so bad, and there's some things in that chapter I'm like, I would never do that to a dog.
Right.
That
was me reading it. I was like,
yeah,
Bill, you have helped me a great deal on this, and this. I'll let you do this.
right.
Anybody who may still be practicing your method at your company, if they do board and trains, I'll let them hit a dog with wooden doweling. But everything I'm reading and going, everything else makes total sense to me. Like even the throw chain, because it's not about creating pain. It's about letting the dog know I can touch you from 30 feet away.
Yeah.
And you have no clue how I touched you.
Right.
And that's why he says, like, it's really important that they don't see you throw this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to go, frick just happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anybody, when they hear the word Keeler, all I can basically say is read the whole book. And if you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna give this a shot, I'm gonna try this with my dog or whatever, if you're gonna do it on your own, do it by the letter and don't skip chapters, and unless you've got some man eater of a dog, you're going to never, ever need anything that's in that problem solving chapter, because you've resolved your issues. Because as you know, as you train a dog, a lot of the issues that the person came to you with,
just go away.
We don't address those issues. Those issues resolve themselves as we train the animal overall. Right. And so as you go through the work and you work through the method, you have a well-trained dog. A well-trained dog doesn't need those things, so it doesn't have those problems anymore.
That's exactly right. That's one of the things, relationships are holistic. And that's one of the things I love about dog training is in very few disciplines do you unpack so much. I mean, commonly with with especially private lesson clients where we end up having long conversations.
Yeah.
Commonly it comes out like, I guess it's because my dad was this way to me, and that's why I have a hard time holding my dog accountable. I had a client who he said that he I'm thinking about how old he is, his age. He must have come out of the closet in 80s or 90s, right? And his dad was a very straight-nosed man, a very hard-nosed man. And he went about a lot of things the wrong way. And he had some conservative values. So he didn't believe in homosexuality personally, morally, right? But it's the way he went about trying to communicate with his son, and he would just beat his son. And so his son, became a client of mine, and his son's kind of his goal for the world was to be the healing and the kindness and the refuge and the safe haven for anyone that his father could never be for him. And so he gets this dog that has aggressive tendencies, and the dog is starting to be aggressive toward his other dogs. And I'm saying, listen, man, you got to kick this dog out off the couch, man. It's like you have to strip away this perch by which the dog believes we are equals, because we are not. You have to create that kind of emotional and mental separation. And he goes, I don't think I can do it, with tears in his eyes. And it's because in his brain, in his mind, he's his dad if he denies that dog any bit of the comfort he wants that dog to have. And so it's like, that's the moment where it's like, gosh, dang, dog trainers are unlicensed therapists.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a remarkable story. I mean, and it's sad, but it's remarkable. And yeah, I mean, we encounter these stories. We learn so much about people's personal lives we never thought we were going to learn,
that they would never share.
Yeah. I mean, we learned so many spousal problems and stuff like that, and just different things. And it's, you have to like it though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I don't mean like I like
You're
people's
not going to
misery
do
or
this
anything,
without it
but
being a passion.
yeah, I I was, as a kid growing up, I was a very shy person.
Yeah.
I would take an F in English class before I would get up and do public speaking. That's a true story. Um,
Wow.
I was like, no, I'm not getting up in front of the class and talking, and I just wouldn't do it. And was very shy. And but when you get passionate about something, your everything about you changes when you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
right? You can speak with
You have a
confidence.
flag worth waving. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And then, it starts out for most people, they learn how to train dogs and they get good at their trade, right? And that takes you so far, but it's never going to get you really far unless you get really good with people, you
That's
know.
right.
And how you're good
Communication
with
is
people is
huge.
different for everybody. So some people are just little softies and they develop relationships with people in a totally different way than I would. And
Yeah.
then, as we already discussed, the way that I am with people. But I'm real with people, and I share stuff about my own personal life and my family with my clients. A lot of times, I actually just did that yesterday with one of my clients, and that opens them up, and then I get to learn more about them, and then I can understand more about why their relationship is with their dog, or why they didn't even work with their dog this week, because of what
Yeah.
the baggage they're carrying around. So yeah, it is, we are therapists, whether we want to be or not. And
That's right.
but I've at one point in time I was like, what the heck, man, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
But over the years I've gotten nowhere. I enjoy it. I enjoy coaching people more than I like training dogs at this point in my career. And I think that's
That's
just
exactly
because
for me. Yep.
I think when you're young, you're trying to learn everything about training dogs, right?
Yeah.
But as you get older, you've got so much wisdom gained through your life that you like to share life with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I like to hear people's story. I like to learn more about them. And it helps me, you know what I mean? Makes me a better person as well.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. And I'm just now realizing, it's probably, people probably open up to me the amount that they do because one of the ways I learned, like, correction, redirection, praise. You negative mark, you redirect, and then you positive mark. I actually learned that from therapy as a kid. And I had anger issues, and my brother was like abusive, and he would hurt me and stuff. And I can only say that because I don't have a million listeners on the podcast. But my brother was abusive, and so it created anger problems in me because I've always have been and am still a gentle man. And my wife, we've talked about it before, but she said people really treat you poorly at times. And she said, and you don't do anything. And she was like, why? Well, I said, well, first off, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. I cannot express to you just how many times in my life there's somebody who holds the power over me. There's no way I can influence them. I'm banking on them being merciful. I can't tell you how many times I've been in that position in my life. And it's, sowing it. The Bible says that God is not mocked. That which a man sows, he also reaps. You sow mercy, you get mercy. And so, but she was saying, people will treat you really poorly. They'll be really mean to you, and you just kind of let it roll off. I say, well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I need mercy when I need mercy. And oftentimes people are just talking out of their butt because they're mad or whatever the case. And it's crazy because over the years I have noticed, well, I'll come back to that. So I was an angry kid, but I was a gentle kid, and I had a hard time hurting my brother back, which you and I know sometimes the bullied dog just needs to bite the bully and get it over with. And it's not the best procedure for training, not by a long shot. I don't think people should let their dogs work it out, because oftentimes their dogs arrange a really crappy arrangement.
Mhm.
And if we don't superintend or at least stand over that working it out, we have no control over how far it goes.
Right.
But that said, I probably just should have hit my brother in the face when I was a kid, and he probably would have stopped. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And so, but they ended up putting me in therapy, and because it was the '90s and like therapy was the thing now. Like we
Yeah.
did that stuff. And not to make you feel old, but you've been training for as long as I've been alive.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
was born in '94.
Oh, no way. Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started training in 94, got married in 95. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I've read your bio and I was like, no kidding. He's literally been training for the amount of years I have been breathing air.
That's that's crazy. Yeah. I
That's
mean,
wild, man.
I know I've been training for a long time and stuff like that, but when you put it that way, and we've had conversations prior to this interview and stuff, and
Sure.
when you put it that way to me, it's like, wow, that's a lot of perspective there that I didn't expect, like it's
Yeah. This
yeah,
is why I consider you a priceless resource, because you got, minimum 20 years on me. What I mean is, when I
yeah,
say minimum is, I've got 10 years, 11 years in this discipline, but maybe they weren't all good years. You ever had like a
sure.
year where like you fast forwarded 5 years in
Yeah,
1 year just because you put your head down and ate dirt all year?
yeah,
So you've got minimum 20 years on me. And, if a lot of them were good years, you've got somewhere in the ballpark of 50 on me. And so this is
yeah,
why I consider you an invaluable resource, and why there have been times where like, I just like stockpiled that one time. I just like in my brain stockpiled problems I needed help with. And I was like, I'm just going to ask Mark what to
yeah.
do.
No, and I
So,
go ahead.
but my parents didn't know what to do because I was this troubled kid. And so I went to therapy, and what he would do is he would take two. He would walk me through the moments where I would lose my cool, because I was starting to do it. I was
Yeah,
starting to hurt others. It took years, but I was beginning to hurt others, which is crazy if you knew me as a kid. I was starting to be
right.
harmful to others. And later on it turned into self-harm, which is crazy. But I was starting to harm others. And what he would do is he would walk me through the moment I lost my cool. And he'd say, Chris, what happened? And I would tell him. I said, well, they called me names and they kicked me in the shin. Said, okay, well then what did you do? Well, I called them names and I kicked them in their shin. And then I respected this man, and he would go, Chris, no. Why would you do that? You hurt them. I would think you, of all people, would understand what it's like when someone hurts you. And it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
waterworks. I'm like, I did so terrible. I'm so sorry. Why? Because I respected the man, and he wasn't mad at me.
yeah,
He wasn't like angry, like, what the heck did you hit that kid? I'm going to. He
yeah,
wasn't like that. He sought to understand me where I was before he sought to change me. And so he would go, and Sam Walton is known for this. If you look back in history, Sam Walton was known for asking questions long before he would answer them. And there was a grocery chain. I think you can find this in Your Next Five Moves by Patrick Bet-David. There was a
mhm,
grocery chain who they were in another nation, and they just wanted to know how some of the other grocery chains were killing it. And they reached out to like 100 companies, and only Sam Walton chose to speak with them. Sam Walton flew them to his home and let them stay with him for a few days. And he asked them questions upon questions upon questions, as if he needed to know things from them. And it's huge in creating relationships. I mean, and of
yeah,
course you know this, but and so he sought to understand me first, and then he wasn't mad at me when I told him I kicked him and I called them names, and he would just let me know that it wasn't the right thing to do. But his disappointment hurt me more in a changing way, a way that would actually make me modify behavior. And so he would go, okay, so what could you have done differently? Right,
mhm,
kind of like what the gentleman did with you.
yeah,
Let me ask you,
yeah,
what might you have, right? And so he'd
yeah,
go, Chris, what could you have done differently? And you and I know he's creating a pattern
yeah,
that I'm going to have an easier time sinking into later, right? He's starting to try to help me build a pattern. that I'm going to autonomously upkeep on my own later on. And he's just going to put just enough cheese at the end of the pattern that I'll keep doing it. And so, I say, well, I probably could have taken a deep breath and counted to 10, which is something he had taught me. He said, son, I want you to take a deep breath and breathe out and count to 10 as you breathe out. Now I'm an adult now, and I realize what he was literally doing is switching which nervous system I used. I think it's sympathetic to parasympathetic. He's literally switching how my brain is handling this. And the Navy SEALs practice something called box breathing, where you, I think it's you breathe in for 5, and then I think you breathe out for 10. No, you breathe in for 5, breathe out for 5, hold no breath for 5, and I think you breathe in for 5. And what it does is it literally switches your brain from like fight or flight to logic processing. And I didn't know what he was doing at the moment, but he was like, I just want you to breathe out for 10 seconds, count to 10. And so he's giving me just enough. And I started doing that. And what he would do right there in the moment is he would say, okay, you're going to do it with me? 1, 2, and he'd do it with me. And then I did. And he goes, that's it. There you go.
There you go.
I knew you could do this. Look at you go. High five.
Yeah.
And from that, I was like, okay, I can do it. And my wife, we actually met in 3rd grade. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, crazy story. I'll have to tell you the story. Maybe we'll have time today. Maybe we won't. We got married in later on. So we knew each other in 3rd grade. So she knew I wasn't an axe murderer, and I knew she wasn't a hooker. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we at least had those bases covered. That's important information for what I'm about to tell you. We started dating, and then we got engaged, and then we got married all within 14, 15 days.
Wow. That's cool.
So sometimes people are like, gosh, dang. It's like, well, we knew each other since 3rd grade.
Yeah.
You knew I wasn't a psychopath. But so my wife would attest to you. She actually remembers in 4th grade seeing me right in front of people. And they're trying to make me mad.
Yeah.
I'm just practicing what I was taught, man. Just practicing, right? Just putting in the reps. And it changed me. Well, anyway, later on in life, it became self-harm, which is wild. But he saw me to understand where I was, to understand me how I was before he sought to change me. And I think so often in the side of the aisle that's more like you and me, that's not afraid to use discipline, not scared of holding a dog to a high standard, not scared of using a penalty. And I've told people with an e-collar, I'm like, are levels above such and such going to hurt your dog? Yeah.
Yeah.
But if your dog's barreling toward an F-150, do we care if he's hurting? No.
Right.
Why? Because that collar is going to hurt a heck of a lot less than the tires of that truck. And so I think on our side of the aisle, I say on our side, closer to ours, because this is not who I am, and I know it's not who you are. But those that just believe, okay, if the dog misbehaves, you beat them. Like you just literally beat them into submission. And those guys still exist today. They're much fewer than they were. And they're not doing it in public like they were. But I think it's easy to think that that's I don't know, to come with a pressure top-down mentality. We'll correct down, right? Find something that's impossible for you to do right now, and then just beat you into doing it right on the way down, rather than to find something you're capable of and to praise you on the way up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a lot of deep stuff.
Yeah, didn't mean to go that far.
No, that's cool. No, that's good.
I wrote I guess it was a year ago. I wrote a book that I haven't done much with, but it was like 270 pages. And a lot of it was just documenting the psychology behind what I do, how I do, why I do. And I already have to modify it because a year ago, it was, what's today, September? So it was a year and some change, year and a couple months. I think I wrote it in June. And I gave the force-free ideology a little bit of credit. And I was like, listen, I think they're well-meaning. And I don't think it necessarily equates to permissive parenting, necessarily. I think there are some that genuinely are just finding what a dog's capable of and praising them up from there. Sure. And they're not finding a lot of correctable opportunities, so to speak, because they're just not putting a dog in those scenarios.
Right.
And in the book, I talk about the 4 parenting styles that the American Psychological Association will tell you about. And it's permissive and uninvolved and authoritarian and authoritative. And how the American Psychology Association will admit to you that only the authoritative parent gets the right work done. That the authoritarian, the permissive, and the uninvolved all create poorly adjusted kids who will go on to abuse drugs and alcohol, who will go on to get into cults. And it's like, this is actually, you know, as unbelievable as it is to say, like, oh, they're going to join a cult somewhere. They're going to go in and get into Heaven's Gate and try to, you know, ride Hale Bop's Comet, you know, off to freaking Neverland, if you remember those people.
I remember that. Yeah.
But what they said is, like, sometimes with the uninvolved and the permissive and the authoritarian, they don't have a healthy relationship with authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
And so some sweet talker comes in and presents authority in a different way than they've ever seen before, and they'll go right for it.
Yeah.
And in the book, I give it a lot of more credit than I should. I have to rewrite it now because I'm like, purely positive is not permissive parenting. It totally could be, but it's not. Well, I disagree now. I think it is purely positive. I think it is permissive parenting, and it's destroying dogs.
Well, I think that's the challenge of writing a book on stuff like that is, you know, through the years I've toyed with the idea of writing a book so many times, and by the
I'll
time
buy 10 copies and mail it to every dog trainer in my
I appreciate that. Every single time I would get an idea that I would procrastinate and not get started on it, and then somebody else would cover the topic in pretty much the same way. And then I'd be like, okay, well, they ran with it. I didn't, you know, but I think with book writing, it's exactly that. Like, we're always learning, you know what I mean? We may be, I may be set in my ways in a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that 4 years ago, I can look back on some things that I wrote or said 4 years ago and look at it and say, I look at that differently now. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, so there's a growth process, and I've always been afraid to put anything in print, that like a published work, that I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna have to revise this in like 2 or 3 years, do a revision to it, because then I'm gonna be changing my mind on things. You know, it's tough.
I wish you would. You know what helped me? Because I've tried to write books before. You know what helped me? Google Docs has a voice processing that's actually very powerful, and you can literally just speak into a mic your entire book.
I've heard about that. Yeah, that would be the way to do it, because I wouldn't.
So it's not just
have
like the talk to text that like our phones will do. Like, it's a pretty sophisticated system. And I did my entire like 50,000 word book, 60,000 word book, whatever it is.
Yeah.
In the Google Docs talk to text.
Yeah. Because I can talk, so that may be the way for me to finally write a short book, is to do it that way.
I really wish you would, because I'd stack that next to every book I've got, man. I think it would center me.
Yeah.
In some moments, I think oftentimes we live in an expert world. You know, trust the experts.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think I'm the kind of person that like I sort of vomit out little short bursts of wisdom every so often here and there, that I feel is wisdom that I've gained, and I want to share it with dog owners or dog trainers or whatever.
Yeah.
But to put on a mass project of putting all kinds of stuff together, to me, is just like, I don't know if I have the mentality to do that, to just being blunt, you know?
So Alex Hormozy is a business guru, and a very wise one at that. And I'm looking for an example here. He, throughout the day, he'll just like think things that are honestly, here we go, perfect, are honestly profound. And they're just freaking tweets, right? And I don't mean like x.com tweets, like Twitter tweets, like 100 and something characters. They're short, you know? And anyway, they're in his book.
Right. I know. So, like sometimes I think all I just need to do is just take all the different things that I write on Facebook and just create a book on all those little mental outbursts of mine.
I feel like it would work. This one says, during my hardest days, I repeated the same phrase to myself: I cannot lose if I do not quit.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a bad to the bone nugget. No, it's just a tweet. Yeah, but that could be a book by itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Quitting, the only guaranteed way to lose.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No doubt.
I feel like if you wrote a book, and this is me officially campaigning for it, I'll buy the first 10 copies. I feel like if you wrote a book, it would help people like me to stay centered, because we live in such a trust the experts world, in this post-information era, where if you wanted to, I could do it right now. If I was a betting man, I'd bet every cent on it that I could take this phone and go to Google Scholar, not just a blog. I bet you I could go to Google Scholar, and find evidence that coffee can help your vision and that coffee can make you go blind. I bet you I could find an article for both, and they'd both be peer reviewed.
Yes.
And one would be from frickin' Purdue and another would be frickin' John Hopkins. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like reputable sources, and it's peer reviewed, but only one of them's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in this information era, at its post-information era, one of the things that helps is to find people whose judgment you trust.
Right. Yeah.
And put that information in. You know what I'm saying? Because so much of it, you just don't know what you're freaking getting anymore. And that was actually one of the reasons why I was like, you know what, baby, I'm going to go ahead and start a podcast. And I know who I'm going to have first. I'm going to ask Mark if he'll come.
Well, I'm honored to be the first. Like, seriously.
Dude, it was so influential to happen upon your Facebook, to find out I wasn't crazy. And by the way, I wasn't the oldest school.
Yeah.
Because there were a couple of your posts really early on. I was like, I don't know, he might be a nut job. Like,
yeah.
And it was super early on for me. And then I like gave Keeler a chance and a few other things. And I was like, and I tried it too. I was like, you know what? Chapters 1 through whatever, there's absolutely zero abuse in that.
Right.
You know what? It either works or it doesn't. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple recommendations I'd find on your Facebook, like Sit on the Dog, and I started throwing Sit on the Dog in, which, by the way, was huge for a dog who just checked out a couple days ago. I'd say a couple days ago, it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and her name was Daisy. She was a super nervous, fearful dog. She would sprint away from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They now kind of have the opposite problem. She rushes the door to greet all of their company. She used to sprint away.
Yeah.
And Sit on the Dog was one of the big things that helped. I would just go to Starbucks and I would do Sit on the Dog as people would walk by, and I would just get progressively closer and closer to the door.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's good to hear.
She has to be next to them. But so it was huge for me, and it helped me to find center in a season where I felt really discombobulated. And I loved as well your uncompromising message. And I realize now from a marketing perspective that having a differentiating message is huge. Saying stuff that like one class of people are going to be pissed. The moment they see you say that, their brain's going to melt. And you can hear like all of the cogs grind to a halt, and you can hear dial-up noises. And they're like, what do you mean? As they twitch and their eyes cross. And so, and I realized that's not just you getting a kick out of people being triggered, although it is. Also, from a business standpoint, it's huge. You purge your page from people who are going to screw up the algorithm. It'll tell Facebook to send your post to people like that, which will destroy your business. But as well, it keeps your lead pool a little bit more clean. It's like disproportionately the kind of people you want to work with. And so there was a post recently. Oh my gosh. When I edit this and put it in a clip, I've got to put a screenshot of it because it was hilarious. You were like, I've got an e-collar and a flexi clipped to a dead ringed choke chain.
Yeah.
Was it a prong? Dude, I like nearly died. I was like, oh, he's like stirring the pot today.
Yeah, there's days that I do it for my own entertainment value because maybe my life is just super boring that day, and I need some hot sauce or something, you know? So, and I don't know what it is. Some days I just get these things pop in my mind and I'm like, yeah, that's got to be put on. I've got to put that out there. I've got to
show them,
you know,
that's freaking hilarious.
But yeah, you know, it's funny because years ago, I mean, I've been on Facebook since it first began. And, but when I don't know how long ago, I'd say maybe 7-8 years ago, I started
I
putting,
checked. I think it was '07.
yeah, but like only like 7 or 8 years ago, I started putting stuff on our Facebook page, and my wife would be like, "You need to delete that." Every time I put something on the business page, she's like, they're going to attack us. We're going to get bad reviews, all this kind of stuff and everything. And I just continue to just be who I am,
Yeah.
and sure, I get attacked sometimes, and that's what deleting and banning people is all about when they're
Absolutely.
not there to have a conversation and they just want to just go after you. But what has transpired through the years of that is not intentionally, but I have created the market for the clients that I want to work with.
That's right.
Most of the clients that come to us have come to us through word of mouth, because we don't do the only advertising that I do is just getting on Facebook and running my mouth. Okay. So I don't pay for any advertising. I don't do any AdWords, nothing. We do nothing. I spend nothing other than my website yearly fee,
That's amazing.
And like, so it's very organic on how we've grown everything. And but when I start now with the word of mouth that goes out there, is I hear from people, they'll say, I ran into so-and-so, I saw their dog and I was amazed by it. And I stopped and I talked to them and they said, you need to go see Mark or Amy or whatever. But there's almost always this, but you need to know something. They're going to make you work,
That's right.
And you don't hear that a lot from a lot of other trainers. They're like, oh, go over there. They got this new facility, or I saw their van go up and down the road or whatever, or I saw that commercial on YouTube, so you should go check them out. But when people get a word of mouth reference about us, they're always like, hey, they're going to get results, but I'm going to tell you, you got to do the work. They're going to hold you accountable. And when I get that from a new client, I'm like, where did you hear about us? And that's what I hear back. And I hear it a lot. I'm like, I'm doing something right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting people in here. It's like, if you ran a gym, would you want people coming into the gym that are literally going to sit there on their phone all day? Or do you want people to come in and they're going to work out? Right.
They're going to contribute to the culture.
Yeah. Right. And so that's the same thing. I mean, not all of our clients are wonderful. Just being honest, we get some clients that don't want to do the work. I mean, that's just that's the nature of the business. But I do feel that the culture that I have created around Canine Command has grown to bring in those types of clients to us. They can go somewhere else and get told what they want to hear and just have fun with their dog and
sure.
But people come to us and they're like, yeah, I really want what I saw that person have. I want the relationship I saw with that person with their dog. And I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask, do you still, every now and again, I get dogs that make me grow. And they push me in ways I haven't been pushed before or haven't been pushed in a long time. In fact, actually, I was doing a checkout with a dog just this morning. And I got to tell you, I was livid because I did the checkout. So for midterm, they come to me. For checkout, I come to them. And it's because I want to work with their dog in the environment the dog's about to be living in again. And I want to be able to combat any bit of relapse that's going to happen because of pattern recognition, because of environment. A lot of GI Joes in Vietnam experimented with heroin and cocaine, and they found that very few of them still did the drug when they came stateside. And analysis found that the big difference was just the change in environment. And in fact, environment plays a huge role in someone's ability to kick a habit or kick an addiction. And being able to fly all the way across the world helped them to kick it. And it was easy. And the guy I was talking to on the plane, a couple months ago, he's a ranger, and he said that like he knows dudes that like not regularly, they the opposite actually, they recreationally just sometimes, like for a weekend, do cocaine. It's like, well, what do you mean?
Right.
And part of it is how quickly their environment shifts and how easy it is to tap out because of the environmental shift. And so I had a dog just this morning who I was doing the checkout, and he was a nightmare. I mean, he didn't listen to anything I said.
Right.
And I've got video of him doing absolutely stellar in my environment and in other places where we've trained. And even during the midterm lesson, they were really happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got him home, and I said, Coda, here, and he ran the other direction.
Yeah.
And so I stemmed him to penalize, get him to turn around, and that dog blew straight through 100.
Wow.
Just kept running away, and I know I had contact, Mark, because he yelped as he ran away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just kept running.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this dog back for another week.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna come back here and work in this environment with him a few more times before I check him back out. So I still get dogs that force me to grow, because my option there is either say, all right, well, that's all you get, and I run a crappy business and good luck, right?
Right.
Or to own it and say, listen, I will always stand behind my work. Give them to me one more week unpaid, one more week, and I can have this right as rain. Do you still get dogs that force you to grow?
100%. 100%.
Really?
Oh,
so
absolutely. Get used to it. Just get used to it, right? I mean, they always say we learn from the dogs. Well, you never stop learning, because I get dogs that come in and, and I think sometimes too, it's the human side of us too. Like sometimes my frame of mind may not be as patient with a particular dog that a week from now, I might have all the patience in the world for, and so it gets to pretend your personal life can reflect in how you work with dogs. I mean, you never work with a dog when you're angry, right? But absolutely, I get dogs that come in, and one of the advantages that I have in our business is it's just my wife and I. So I don't have a bunch of employees that work underneath me that look up to me like I'm some kind of a dog god, that I have to have all the answers, right?
Sure.
My wife and I are equals in this. I mean, we met in dog training school. We are absolute equals. And so if I'm at a loss, I'll just look at it and say, I don't know what the hell to do with this dog. I mean, after almost 30 years, I'll be like, I can't get through to this dog on, command A or B or whatever. I'm like, I'm struggling over here, baby. Can you help me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I might just be like, this speak and say that we're talking about board and trains, right? And I'll just be like, work with this dog for a couple of days and I'll work with yours, which works out well anyway, because, the dogs benefit from that.
Yeah. But having more than one handler.
Yeah. It's, for me, it's just wonderful for me to be completely vulnerable with her and just be like, I'm at a loss. Like, you need to help me here, And she does the same thing. She's like, you need to go out and work with that dog, because I'm not getting anywhere today or something with it. But yeah, I mean, but I'm always getting dogs in that, they make you scratch your head. You're just like, what the heck is going on here?
This is different. What do I do with this thing?
Or it's you see the issue, you see the temperament, you see the behavior, and you're like, all right, I've seen this hundreds of times. And you go to apply training and you think it's going to resolve the issue, and you're like, okay, we're still having problems. I'm not seeing, so you're always growing. You're always having those moments where you realize it's humbling, because you're always like, I don't know it all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you will never, there is not a dog trainer out there that will walk this earth that will know it all. You know what I mean? Because you're learning every day, and your days are going to end one day. Your life will be over, and you still haven't learned all you need to know. It's just like us as human beings learning life, right? We will die with wisdom that we have not gained. You know? So
that's a nice
never-ending journey
to think about it this way, that like, even when you die, there will be things you didn't know.
Yeah.
And so you might as well make peace with the fact that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Because the sooner you make peace with the idea that you don't know jack crap,
yeah,
the sooner you can start learning. That was really the big reframe for me this year, was like, I thought I knew a ton. And don't get me wrong, I knew crap tons more than the trainers I knew, but I was a big fish in a small pond. And then I moved to a bigger pond and I was the tiny fish again. I was like, oh crap, there's tons I don't know. And then I started doing something that I don't recommend people do lightly, but I started praying for the kind of dogs that are going to force me to grow. I was like, Lord, send me the ones that are going to force me.
That's a dangerous one to ask for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also the dude that prays for patience. People are like, don't pray for patience. I'm like, no, I'm going to have to get it at some point.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like you. And it's like, he's going to run. I'm going to chase him.
Right.
He's going to fire. I'm going to fire back, baby. You're going to kill me. You're going to earn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Like, that's how my brain works. It's like, I'm like, when I see a car on like that's stalled or whatever and they're pushing it, I'm not the guy. That's called first responder syndrome or something like that, where you just assume someone else will do something and so you don't stop. I don't have that.
I don't either.
When I see a car,
it never goes away from me.
I hop out immediately and I go start pushing the car, right? And so this is how my brain works. And so it's a lot of people are like, don't pray for patience, don't pray. And I'm like, Lord, send me the dogs that are going to force me to learn, and then help me to learn the lesson that I need to learn to be better. Because if I just don't stop praying like that, if I just put my head down and eat dirt, in 5 years, I'll be 50 years ahead of everybody. You know what I mean? Or everybody in my circle. And so that was this year was the year of like, eat dirt and win. Like, I saw somebody, I'm going to get, you know what? I'm going to get my wife to make one of these shirts. Along with your gift, I'll send you one. I saw someone, they were wearing a shirt and it said, no one cares, work harder.
Yes. Yes.
And that was this year for me. I was like, you know what?
I have that on a banner in my gym. We have a little family gym in our basement. I have that on a banner in my gym.
That is so awesome.
No one cares, work harder. That's for me. I mean, that message is not for other people. That message is for me. You know, when I'm sitting there gasping for air in the middle of a high intensity workout, and I look up and I look at it, I'm just like, yeah, get off your butt and work, you know?
There was a season for me where God was breaking this victim mentality in me, because the world wants us to have it right now. And I'm going to put on my tinfoil for a second. And I'm going to say that personally, I believe it's because you're easier to conquer.
Yeah.
I can't personally look at the way nations, especially in the East, are posturing themselves and not see what the Bible describes as the end times.
Yeah. Right.
And so I look at it and I think the world wants us to be weaker. I think we're easier to rule that way. And I think the very idea of like universal basic income to me is like, become the ultimate victim, have someone else do the work that feeds your family. And I heard one man say it this way. He said, if you give the government the right to feed your family, you give them the right to starve your family. And and there's a season that it took 2 years to come out of. It took 2 years to come out of, and it was killing me. It was breaking me. And everything just started going wrong in my life. And like, my business was hurting and I didn't know how to fix it. And I was struggling with clients in a way that I've never struggled with clients. And I got a streak of really bad clients, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And I mean, people who won't put in an ounce of work and who will leave a seething 1-star review that you were garbage. And like, people just blatantly lying. It was bad. And then I started getting sick, and I don't get sick often. I've got a pretty robust immune system. I started getting really sick. And then I would have days where I felt like I was this close to a mental breakdown just all day. Yeah. And if someone could literally just say your mom's fat, and I would just crack, you know, like, it was just breaking me. And I remember like the last straw for me, I was pulling open this drawer, our bed frame. It's got drawers in the side and in the front for extra storage. And of course the bed goes on top of that. I was pulling open a drawer, and the drawer like broke in my hand. Yeah. And it was like the straw that broke it. And I was like, right. You gotta be freaking kidding me. And I was like, I have no freaking money to replace this bed frame, and I'm not going to go out and get into some debt to replace this thing. And this stupid thing broke in my hand, and I can't fix my business. And I'm mad at other people when they don't deserve it. And I have terrible clients, and I don't know if I want to train dogs anymore, and this and that and this and that and this and that.
But you were going through that layered stress model.
Yeah. Just like everything just boom, crunching on me. And then this stupid drawer breaks, and I'm about to cry over a freaking drawer. Yeah. And I remember, man, in that moment, it was like I think it's Isaiah, where God says, you will hear a voice from behind you saying, you know the way, walk in it. And in my heart, there was this small voice that said to stand up, square your shoulders. You are no victim. You're a victor. And, the Bible says that the believer is more than a conqueror through Christ. And it was a major reframe for me because I was living this victim life. And in that moment, in that season, and historically, I'm not a victim man, but here I was. And I was like, you know what? And it was more than fixing the drawer. I was like, I've got wood glue and clamps. You know what I mean? And I was like, I can freaking do this. And it was, there's a moment where the lepers are outside of the kingdom of Israel or the camp of Israel. And I think it's the Assyrians are camped not too far away. And there's such a terrible famine. And the prophet had told the king, tomorrow there will be food. And it was so bad that they were eating bird poop, that they were using that as like bread. And the prophet tells the king, he says, tomorrow there will be bread. And the king laughs. Yeah. And the lepers are sitting outside of the gate because they have to. And that was the model that God gave them. And they went, you know what? Why don't we sit here till we die? Why don't we just go over to the enemy camp and see if they'll give us some food? And they go to the enemy camp and no one's there.
Yeah.
And they've left money and clothes and food and, livestock. They just left.
Yeah.
And so that's what hit me. Why do I sit here till I die? Man, I can stand up right now, grab this thing by the scruff of the neck and put it through heck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. No.
And it changed me. And I started thinking in terms of that. It's like, nobody cares, work harder. And I'm like you, it's not a message for other people. And then again, it may be. It's not about that. It's for me in those moments when life wants to make me weak. Yep. It's, work harder. But it sucks. Cool. And I through that season, I got this kind of policy for myself. We don't cry sitting down. Cry standing up. Cry fixing things. You can cry all you want. Don't cry sitting down. Don't cry just letting things work all over you. Cry standing. Cry fighting. I have a couple more questions. I know we're getting close here. One of them is, because I know what it's been for me, do you ever have dogs or clients? I won't ask you to name either, but do you ever have dogs or clients that make you consider retiring?
Well, I haven't been like badly bit. I really haven't. Honestly, I haven't really been severely bitten by a dog in my entire career. But I would say that at this stage of my life, if I was to get a really bad bite or something that hospitalized me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It would make me question. I would make me question, do I want to do something else with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's days where I might be working with a particular dog and I might say, God, I don't want to do board and trains ever again.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you'll get a dog.
It's good to hear that you sometimes encounter that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And for my clients that listen to this, like, I'm sorry, but don't think I'm talking necessarily about your dog, but like,
yeah.
You try to vet dogs that, you're going to bring a dog in for a board and train. You want to make sure it's the right dog for that program because it's going to be living with me, and so, but sometimes I get a dog in and I'm like, oh, this dog is going to be the end of me for like the whole time it's here. Right.
Yeah.
It won't go to the bathroom when it goes outside, or it's pooping everywhere. And it's, I'm just struggling with the dog's anxiety and all these different things, and so I don't want to say that it's any particular dog, but every now and then one will come along that will be like, I'll have a group class where I'll have, I typically have like 8 people in a group class. I might have a group class where like I have 4 or 5 students in the class that won't do any work whatsoever.
Nice.
And the dogs are out of control. They're barking nonstop. They come in every week and they're not doing any work. And I know it. I'm not seeing any homework videos. And those moments make me be like, I don't want to ever do a group class again. This sucks.
Yeah.
And so I have those moments,
Yeah.
And then what I do is I might take a break for a couple of weeks and then I just recharge, or I'll switch gears and I'll say, you know what, I'm not going to do any group classes for a couple of months, and I'm going to focus on private lessons and work one-on-one where I can connect better with people, you know?
Yeah.
So I find ways. I've found through my career that when I get, because you'll go through these valleys where you're going to like, oh man, I am getting like the hardest dogs to work with and board and train, like one after another.
Yeah.
And I get burnt out, you know?
Yeah.
It's so hard on me because I want the dogs to be trained to a certain standard. And some of these dogs are so difficult to work with. And when that stuff happens, then I start switching gears and I'm like, I need a break from board and trains for a little while. And I'll just start focusing on something else. And God always has a way for me to help me through all this. I've always felt that way, to keep me from crashing completely, getting so burnt out where I do something stupid or I walk away from it all, you know, keeps me in it.
Yeah. It's what has been your favorite breed historically to work with and your least favorite historically to work with? Not saying you don't like the dog. Maybe.
I'll still work with certain dogs, even if they're my least favorite. Right.
Yeah. Of course. We all do.
I would say I will say this in the form of obedience, right? When I think about trainability and getting a response, training a dog to a certain standard, hounds are my least favorite. Is when we talk about categories, right? We talk about breed categories. I don't like working with hounds quite as much because they're not bred for obedience, pure and simple. You know what I mean? They're independent dogs doing something with their senses, and bloodhounds particularly are some of the harder dogs to work with for obedience, right?
Yeah.
English bulldogs, another one. I don't like working with English bulldogs. I will work with them. I hate
working with English bulldogs, but it's because every moment I am with that dog, I am wondering if it is going to die in my custody.
Well, and I was just going to add
1% too hot.
Well, especially you're in Texas too, but like, that's another thing is as I've gotten to the point in my career where they're not as popular as they used to be anyway, but I got to the point where I'm like,
thank God.
there's certain breeds where I'll say, no, if somebody comes to me and they want to do a board and train with the English bulldog, I'll say I won't do it. You know, because they have too many health issues, too many breathing issues. We'll do private lessons together. Your dog's health is your problem, not mine. I'm not going to take on that responsibility. I don't want a dog to die in my care. And the same thing goes, we get some people who come in, they rescue a dog that's, 8-10 years old and they want to do dog training. And that's great. I love it. You know what I mean? Because those dogs can learn too. But I won't take in some senior breeds and some senior dogs for a board and train because I just don't want a dog that's going to go through anxiety that is up there in age in my care. I think it's risky. I think that answers your question.
Yeah. What challenge in your life has most shaped who you currently are?
Oh man. That could take a whole nother hour. There's too many, you know what I mean? There's too many challenges through life. I mean, meeting my wife was a huge impact on me because I was a non-believer and she was. To me, she was like an alien. I didn't understand her and I wanted to understand her. You know what I mean? I wanted to understand what she believed and why it made her who she was. And she basically witnessed to me, and then that's how I got saved. And then so that was the first major and most important impact of my life was meeting her and getting saved.
Praise the Lord.
And then, becoming a law enforcement officer changed who I was in good ways and bad ways. It's a job that definitely has a major impact on your life, and it stays with you. It made me a very foul-mouthed person during those years of my life.
I'm sure.
I dealt with some of the worst people you could possibly imagine, and that brought out aggression in me. And
makes you jaded.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it made me not trust anybody for a long, long time. And even like 10 years out of law enforcement, I still had that sort of cop persona in my brain. Like
I'm
it was
sure.
hard not to look at everything through that lens. So it impacted me greatly. And I feel like now I'm a lot more easygoing kind of a guy. And I'm still got that first responder mindset, but it doesn't affect my life the way that it used to be. But so that impacted like the whole middle part of my life, from like my 20s and into like, 40. And then of course getting shot, that was another major impactful thing in my life.
Impact. As an understatement, and both physically, literally and metaphorically.
I will say that, I was at a state in my career where my job was super important to me, probably too important. Okay. Our relation, my wife and I had a good relationship, but it wasn't as strong as it should have been. We, at the time, were between churches. We weren't going to church regularly. We had moved to a new residence. So we lost the church that we were going to. And so God wasn't a big part of my life at that point. Getting shot restarted that, because I realized I was like, I got a second chance. Why did I survive? What am I here for? So that was majorly impactful. I'll be straight up and be honest that, like all things, you can have an impactful thing happen in your life where you start turning to God and you start looking for that guidance, and that can wane very quickly.
Sure.
You can backslide even from near death experience. You can backslide, and I backslid again. And then you go through more years, and then you have kids, and then right out, not long after I got shot, we had our first kid. And so then that's another impact that happens in your life. You start looking at life completely differently, because now you have a whole new set of responsibilities.
Right. That's right.
And now my faith isn't just about me and my salvation. My faith is about my family and how I raise my kids, And so now I have to find ways within myself to grow, to become a better Christian man, better husband, better father, because there's more to it than just what's in my best interest, but what is in theirs as well,
Yeah.
So,
Mark, you've been awesome. Just one last question, if you've got a couple more seconds.
Sure.
If you had it to do over again, what would you say to your 94 self? What advice would you now give, looking back on not only your career as a dog trainer, but raising your kids and nurturing your marriage and connecting with your creator? What would be your advice looking back on your 94 self?
My first thing would be, I would want someone to just I had people tell me that, but I would basically want to look at myself in the mirror and say, nothing.
Okay.
Because coming out of a dog training school, I wasn't self-taught. I went to a school and spent 3 months living there and learning dog training and stuff like that. When I got out of there, I thought I knew everything, just like every dog trainer, and I thought I had all the answers, and I knew nothing,
Man.
And so, I guess at that age, and I guess I was like 22, 21, 22 at the time.
Yeah.
Is just like, realize that you're young and you're dumb, and you've got a lot to learn, and just to slow down, you got a long life ahead of you, and just to slow down and, stay the course, but you're not trying to finish the race at that time. You know what I mean? Like it's a journey,
Yeah.
But I struggled so long with feeling like I felt at that time. I was like, how in the world do we grow our business? How do we become dog trainers where we can do this full time? And we struggled with that in our early 20s, just coming out of school. We're like, how can we make this happen? We have no money. I was working a minimum wage job, I'm like, how in the world can we do this? And we had no answers. We had no family that had capital that could say, hey, we'll go buy you a boarding kennel and you guys can have a boarding kennel. And our dream for many, many years was we would have a boarding kennel that could be a steady income. And then we would do dog training out of that. And I will say this, that I look back almost 30 years later, and I'm thankful that my vision and my dream at that time to own a kennel never, ever, ever happened.
Took place.
Because I would have gotten so burnt out so fast running a kennel that I probably would have never been the dog trainer that I am today, because I would have quit. So God allowed us to grow slow.
I saw you post something similar last year at around Thanksgiving, and you were like, right now we would be taking care of dogs, and instead we get to enjoy our family. And I was like,
yeah.
And it caused a check, because that was a goal of mine. And I was like, oh crap, wait, no, I don't want a kennel. I was like, I don't want that. I forgot like that you're going to make a lot of your money over holidays, and darn near all of it. And I don't want to do that.
If you talk to almost anybody that owns or runs a boarding kennel, they'll tell you it's the most miserable life to have. Everyone that I know that has it hates it, but it's good, steady income. I mean, there's always a demand for them, so they stay in business. But the only way you're ever going to enjoy it is if you can manage it from a distance. You know what I mean? Like, you've got people that are running it. You're not in there cleaning kennels on Christmas morning while your family's waiting on you. You know,
that's right. Yeah, you'd have to have plenty of employees, and you'd have to have enough that you could cycle them in and out. And
exactly. Yeah, but I don't want the headache of employees. So
it has been so awesome getting a chance to talk with you. Now, you do board and trains. People can bring in dogs to you from anywhere.
Yeah. I don't do airline shipments of dogs, but so if somebody wants to bring a dog into me from far away, they can just drive it in. And I've had people drive from California to North Carolina to bring a dog to me. And we've actually gotten a lot more long distance board and trains over the last few years. To be honest, I would prefer for people that are more local to me, because I want them to be able to give them that support where they can come in for refreshers. But yeah, we got board and trains available pretty much for anybody. Private lessons, group classes, remote training.
Perfect. So how do people get in contact with you to talk about, hiring you to work with them and stuff?
Well, they can, they can go to our Facebook page, which is just facebook.com// Canine Command. And they can learn whether or not they like me or not. See if I'm a little bit too saucy for them. So there's that. But that, by going to the Facebook page, they get to see some training videos and stuff like that, and kind of get to see what we do. But we send everybody to our website, which is caninecommand.com, the letter K, number 9, command.com. And from there, everything that we offer and the prices are on there. And we try to be as transparent as possible. And we just basically, we try to tell people, fill out the contact form and we'll be in touch with you. I don't deal with people who call me and ask prices. Like, I send them, you go to my website and you read up and you do your homework, and then we'll get to talking after that. So that's what we do. The
Probably
website,
a better model anyway. You spend less
time. Again, I like my free time. I like my free time. I like family time. I don't want to spend my time on the phone as a dog trainer, spending 30, 45 minutes answering questions to people who are just going to say, well, that's too expensive or something, or, you know what I mean? So
I'm 100% with you.
I've just been doing it too long. This is what we do. This is what we charge. If you want to sign up, here we are. Simple as that.
Mark, you've been so awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to share this with everybody. You have been such an invaluable resource of information and encouragement and inspiration for me. And I think most of that you haven't truly known maybe until today, but you have meant the world to me. And I talk to my wife about you when you post on Facebook. I'm like, look what Mark said.
Wow.
And I may just have to start melting. I'll just say it. I may just have to start melting woke brains when I'm bored. Yeah. Well, man, this has been wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you, for real. And you asking me first, that's flattering. I don't, I was surprised by that, but I'm very thankful for it. It's awesome. No, you're the man. You're the man. Like I said, if you wrote a book, I'd buy 10 copies and I'd give 9 away. It gives me something to think about. Maybe. Well, don't forget about, I'm officially campaigning for it. So don't forget about the voice typing, because that helped me phenomenally. I could never finish a book, and then I wrote like a 60,000 word book because of the voice typing. There you go. That's the way. Technology. Brother, it was such a pleasure. I am no doubt going to be in contact with you in the future. Absolutely. I'm always here, man. All right, brother. Well, you be safe today. Don't get bit. All right. You too. Take care. Thanks, man. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.